Now, King Kong vs. Godzilla is a very weird film. It shouldn't have worked if you put it down on paper, but it kind of did, and this film essentially influenced everything with Godzilla going forward, pitting him up against much more well-known creatures for quite a while, and then slowly adding to a much more unknown, brand new kind of kaiju which were introduced. I do like this film, and it influenced so much of Godzilla. I really just can't complain. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at the Americanized version of this film. It is kind of the same experience. The main difference is that the American version adds some news reports for some reason, and they're so fucking out of place. It's very annoying at times, but the overall movie we'll actually get into now. As said earlier, the American version of this film adds some weird news segments. It does take away at times, it doesn't add anything to the plot apart from giving some bits of exposition, so it can easily just be ignored or cut out, it wouldn't impact a film too much. The main plot of the movie though revolves around like a pharmaceutical company who has some kind of stake in a television broadcast company who want King Kong to kind of become their new mascot and to boost the ratings of the shows that they promote. It's a really fucking weird premise, but it does work in a very odd way. He essentially sends two guys to Faroe Island. They see some natives, they give them some ciggies, and then a little bit later on a giant octopus appears and Kong just like wrecks that bitch. Kong shows he's a little bit of a lightweight, and then he's just taken back to Japan because fuck it by this point. Godzilla also appears at some point during this. Obviously you know where this film's going. There's a part where King Kong climbs on top of a building to reference it. There's a part where Godzilla and Kong do a little bit of a match which is fun, and then it goes into a big brawl. The themes of this movie follow quite closely behind Mothra with the capitalism kind of thing. It's alright, it's done a lot more in the slapstick comedic style this time, but it is a little bit annoying that they did it twice in a row for two very, very different films. Sadly, we're also back to the annoying subplots, which has a romantic subplot which really isn't very important, and mostly is just there just to give one of the other characters stuff to actually do when he's not on screen properly. But I do have to say overall the plot is quite fun. It's not good by any stretch of the imagination. It's a stereotypical, we need to put these two monsters together somehow to let them fight. But for what it is, it's good enough. The themes, even though it's just recycled, it's still done pretty well, I can't complain. So, I can't say it's bad, let's just leave it as that. The casting characters in this movie is much more of a mixed bag. There's some very good characters and there's some very boring characters. Sakurai is quite a good protagonist throughout the movie. He has some good slapstick comedy moments and just some good comedy moments in general, like when he hands the Islanders a radio and some ciggies. But he's fun to watch, I will say that. He's quite stereotypical, but there's a lot of charisma brought to the character to make it less boring. So it's a good character and I can't really complain too much. Asuma, on the other hand, is quite a lot more dull. He doesn't really do much wrong in the film, he's much more just a stereotypical companion character, but there's also not much really he adds apart from being the yin to the yang. Kazuo, who's played by the guy who was in Rodan, is very boring. This character is the one that I mentioned earlier where essentially he's given extra mini plot lines in order to actually be relevant in the film. He could easily have been cut out. It seems very much like the character and his subplots are added for padding. The main part that he actually does in the film is when he goes to save his girlfriend. Nothing else really is that relevant. He's literally there to do that part to pad the runtime, and so that they can develop some kind of like metallic string which will be able to lift King Kong up later. Something that didn't really need explaining much since this film's so like shitty cocaine anyway, but they did it. It's not really bad, but it could easily have just been written out. Mr. Taco is essentially just Nelson from Mothra, but on so much fucking heroin. The character is off his tits, it's amazing to watch. Every single moment of him is absolutely hilarious, so I love this character, he's so much fun. Probably the best character in the whole film. There's a couple of fun cameos. Dr. Cerazaro appears, a guy who ends up coming in Atragon in basically the same role the year afterwards appears. It's decent enough. There's also a girlfriend character that I mentioned earlier. She does literally nothing in this movie, but very luckily she's not in it much. She's essentially there to give the mini subplot where he has to go and save her, and the part where King Kong climbs up a building holding like a human girl. That's all she's there for. She's alright as what she does, but it's very unnecessary again. it could have just been a random person who got lifted up by Kong and it wouldn't have made much of a difference. Now, the part of the movie which sucks the most is actually what America did with their characters. Adding all these random news characters is very irritating. They do nothing towards the film apart from basically make you pause the movie, watch them for like 1 minute segments, then go back to actually enjoying the film. It's very annoying, it's very frustrating. The characters do absolutely nothing for the plot. And for some reason, the American version, even though they appear on screen for like 4 minutes each, they're given top billing. Why? It's very stupid. I dislike it a lot. Hey ho, let's be honest, we're not watching King Kong vs Godzilla to watch the characters. We're watching it to see King Kong punch Godzilla and Godzilla blast him with atomic breath. That's all we're here for. But characters, mixed bag, once again. Moving on. Ishiro Honda returns once again to direct this film after doing Mothra. It's essentially the same kind of directing style that's in Mothra. It's good, it's big, at times it's good and bombastic. The shots do move a lot. The only real issue is in this film, there's a couple of parts which aren't in focus. There's a digger scene especially where it's very much out of focus and I don't know why they allowed that. It's just really off. And I will admit the camera work in this film is great. Apart from that, great directing once again. Not Skull Island is probably one of my favourite locations throughout the entire franchise. It looks great, it reminds me a hell of a lot of both the 1933 version of King Kong and the 2005 Peter Jackson version. It's good to watch, I have no real complaints there. The only big issue that I probably have for stuff like the set design and location is that a hell of a lot of this movie takes place just in fields, which I will say, they look amazing. Honestly, they look really good. It looks so realistic. It's just, when you have King Kong battling Godzilla, I wanted to see them punch a fucking skyscraper into each other, not throw some rocks. It's not exactly bad, it's not something that takes you out of the experience, but it's just kind of more of a personal preference more than anything. But set design locations are great, as usual by this point. Unless, of course, once again you count the American bits, which look like they were literally made in a day. The kind of stuff you'd expect to see in one of those quickly built classrooms from like primary school and high school. It's bad, it's cheap, it's awful. How did this actually get approved by Toho to be released? I will never fucking know. Then again, they did release Godzilla in 1998, so... The destruction in this movie is awesome when it comes to special effects, although there isn't really much of it. Godzilla attacks a base at one point, which is great. Odaka attacks the village, which also looks good, even though it's not too much destruction. And Kong has his own little rampage. But that's essentially it, apart from when Godzilla and Kong battle and destroy that like castle building. It's really annoying, as I said earlier. I don't see why they did it apart from because they weren't too sure if this film would actually be successful. Obviously it ended up being really successful, but at the time, I don't think anyone fully knew, because King Kong hadn't really been touched as a franchise since 1933. Godzilla hadn't been touched for the past 7 years by Toho themselves, so it did seem to be a little bit of testing the waters more than anything, and I do understand that. I just wish there was some more destruction-styled moments. The biggest issue though with special effects is the blue screen. I know I kind of like mentioned it in Mothra, but in this film it's awful. I'm sorry, but it's bad. If you look at Mothra, for instance, which didn't have the best to begin with, times that by 10 for badness, and you've got King Kong vs Godzilla. The part where all the islanders are running around away from Odaka, it looks so fucking shit. Like, oh my god, how did this actually get past testing? It's awful. They've all turned blue. It's not good. It is appalling. It's honestly quite lucky that the rest of the special effects in this film are as good as they are, or else this would have been a very, very negative part of a review. Sadly, since I'm watching the American version, Ikari Fube is not going to be mentioned much in this review, as all of his music was cut out and replaced, apart from the Islanders chant. But I will state the music they replaced, despite it being stock footage, it works quite well in comparison to what happened with Godzilla Raids Again, where it was so stereotypical and so bland you could literally see the music coming before the scene even happened. This one does implement it quite well. It is generic, like I said. There's not too many songs that you'll remember, but for what it is, it's a decent enough score. It does the job. It doesn't really offend anyone by doing it. It's just kind of there. Finally! 6 videos in, and I can finally state that the sound effects actually sound like fucking sound effects. The dubbing's great, explosions actually sound like explosions, things moving about actually sound like things moving about, destruction actually sounds like rubble for once. It's great, I love it, I'm so happy with it. I have absolutely no complaints here for the first time ever, so let's just move on to the kaijus. For the actual kaiju designs themselves, Godzilla looks great. This is like a fan favourite style for him, and it does continue onwards. It's a great design, I have no real complaints here. Personally, I still prefer a lot of ones in the Heisei series, but I know this is a fan favourite and there's good reason behind that. King Kong, on the other hand, it looks gross, it looks cheap, it looks sweaty. It just doesn't look nice, it's greasy, it's awful, awful design. And he looks so damn cheap. And I can't really say anything else about it. It's a nasty design and I don't know why they settled on this. Odaka is kind of a weird one. If you don't know, they use a real octopus, so that's why it looks as good as it does, with only a few moments going to stop motion, which I personally think look great. Any stop motion's good in my opinion because I just love it as an art form. It's a good design, I like the creature. I'm kind of sad that they didn't use him more in later films. I know obviously he made appearances in Frankenstein vs. Baragon and War of the Gargantuans, and obviously made kind of like a cameo joke appearance in Kong Skull Island. I just wish you used it more, it's a great design and I do love it. The first proper fight scene in this movie is King Kong versus Odaka. It doesn't look the greatest, but it's a fine enough fight. I have no real complaints or too many compliments. It's decent enough. The next fight, which is the original Godzilla vs. Kong, it's very short, it's about 30 seconds, but I personally love it. The fight essentially goes, they see each other, King Kong's like, oh, what the fuck? Godzilla blasts some atomic breath, and then he just runs off. He just nopes the fuck out there. It's hilarious. I love it so much, and it does make you really hyped up for the actual fight, which comes later on. King Kong wrecking a city is great fun. It's nothing we haven't seen before, really, except now it's King Kong. But the final fight with Godzilla vs. Kong, oh, it's awesome. It's so much cheesy 1960s shit. It's amazing and is one of my favourite Godzilla fight scenes of all time. As a part of the literally roll down the hill together, Kong gets knocked the fuck out. He gets lightning powers for some reason, and him and Godzilla just keep punching each other in the face. The eat your broccoli meme was born. I love this fight scene. Just because of that one fight scene, I can't complain against any of them, because they were all basically there just to lead up to this moment, and the moment was so good. It's worth going through them even if they're not the best of the fight scenes. Overall though, I forgot how much fun this film was. I love it. It's a great movie. Obviously it has some big problems, the blue screen especially, not very good. The casting characters are pretty bland at times. Some of the other things such as King Kong's design, awful, but everything else, especially that final fight scene, makes up for it in big ways. I also just wish that the American version didn't add those weird news segments because they don't do anything. They're basically there just to give out exposition which doesn't need to be there, and it confuses the timeline by saying that Godzilla didn't exist before now for some reason. So it's odd, but I love this film. It's cheesy 1960s shit essentially, and if you like that kind of stuff with kaiju movies, you are going to love this film. Which is why in total I give King Kong vs. Godzilla a 7 out of 10. It's cheesy, cheesy fun, but I fucking love it. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please be sure to like, share and subscribe. On Tuesday we're going to actually be going through Atragon this time. It was just my little mess up. But if you head up here, then you'll see a playlist of all the other Godzilla or Godzilla related reviews I've done so far, or in the future. And if you head down here, you'll see all my old Jackson review stuff because I hate myself. Yeah, just enjoy your weekend and I will see you on Tuesday for the Atragon review. Goodbye.